Good Monday morning, everybody, and welcome to No More Mondays. This is the show where we believe three important things. Humans still matter, mediocrity is expensive, and ownership will change everything. As always, I am your host, Angie Callen, and today we are talking about something that might seem simple, but can lead to a lot of that expensive mediocrity and be surprisingly hard to do, and that is getting clear. Today, I am joined by Steve Woodruff. He is part of my unconference family, and he is also known as the King of Clarity. He helps leaders, teams, and organizations get crystal clear and communicate effectively. Music to my ears. He is the author of Clarity Wins and The Point, and his core belief is super, super simple. Confusion loses and clarity wins. I couldn't agree more. And newsflash, most of the time, when people struggle to communicate, it's not a messaging problem. It is a clarity problem. So today we're going to help you address it. We're going to talk about why clarity is hard, but shouldn't be hard, where confusion shows up, and what actually changes when we just get back to basics and simplify. Steve, welcome to No More Monday, King of Clarity.
Great to join you here, Angie.
I also forgot to tell you that I kind of want to call Steve the Wolfman Woodruff because he has maybe the most amazing radio voice you've ever heard. So,
except I've never been a DJ.
That may change after the millions of people that hear you on No More Mondays.
Okay, that's all right. I can do that.
So I love this idea that clarity, we overcomplicate it, right? And it actually does become a hindrance to communication, whether it's at home. In fact, just a couple of days ago, my husband was trying to ask me a question and I'm like, he's like, yeah, I just said that. And I'm like, but no, you didn't. You think you did, right? It can happen at home. It happens in our businesses with clients and in teams. And for some reason, it's simple, but really difficult for people, especially sometimes like smart, capable people, right? We try to like do too much. Why? Why is this so hard, even if it is so simple?
The biggest barrier to clarity is this constant desire to give too much information. And in a lot of the work I've done with corporate clients, there's just this desire to spew too much. And whether it's branding or marketing or selling or leadership, we want to say it all. And the problem is that the human brain can only process so much information. And if we overwhelm people with a white paper when all they're looking for is a soundbite, we lose the opportunity to get our point across. And so it sounds easy to say less, be simple, be distilled, but it's really, really hard to do for most people.
Well, and when we think about it from like a business and a marketing organization, the white paper versus soundbite is such a good example because for us, we feel like everything in the white paper is critical to the messaging when really the audience only actually needs the soundbite to then add layers to a conversation. But I find the same thing, that people feel like they need to get everything they think you need to know out in one fell giant dump of a swoop, and nobody can digest that.
No, you're not doing anybody a favor. In fact, what you're doing is you're actually making people work too hard. If they have to sort through a bunch of jargon or 5 messages that should have been just one message, or a spewing of 2 minutes worth of nonsense, you're actually being unkind to that person, when what they really need is just give me the simple point. And then if we can unfold it later, that's fine, but turn the light on for me really fast right now. And so if your podcast title was Tuesdays are really bad, Wednesdays are questionable, Thursdays are blah, 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 blah. No, just No More Mondays is fine. And then, okay, why did you name it No More Mondays? Okay, now you can tell me a little bit more. So it's the little bits, what I call the memory darts, that really make a difference. You've got to get your message into a memory dart that quickly turns the lights on and makes people go, I need to know more about that.
A lot of times I'll say, I love memory dart, by the way. And it's funny, when we were at the unconference, I said something. I think I said to somebody, I'm a former engineer who loves people. And they looked at me and they went, is that your memory dart? And they actually thought it was part of like your framework. And I was like, yeah, I have a memory dart. And I didn't even realize it. But it's like, whether it's a soundbite, dangle the carrot, thinking in how do I start a conversation instead of how do I have an entire conversation in one fell swoop is important, because you're right in that the human brain can't digest a lot. I'm curious what you've seen and how that is being reduced, right? It's even less now. Our attention spans are lower now, right?
Well, there was this, I don't think they were trying to be funny, but it was Microsoft that put out this study that said we now have the attention span of a goldfish, 6 seconds or some crazy thing like that. I honestly don't believe that biologically, physiologically, the human attention span has changed in any way. I just think that the competition and the
Yeah, the
amount of
distractions have
distraction
increased.
and noise and stimulation is so great that it makes it much more difficult for anybody to focus because we have 28 things in front of our face now instead of one. So, but nonetheless, the wiring of the brain is that it's looking for relevance. It's looking for the what's in it for me all the time. That's what we're going to focus on is what's important, what's interesting, what's in it for me. And the art of a great soundbite, of a great introduction, of a great memory dart is it's got to contain relevance to the listener. It's got to pique interest and it's got to rise above all the other noise that's out there.
I love this. I love that perspective. And actually, I think I'm going to agree that it isn't our attention spans that are reducing. It is it's what's competing for them that is increasing. And so, and I think you make a really, really good point with what a memory dart is, and most importantly, who it is for. That's where I think a lot of times confusion comes from, right? Is we mistake information that we think the audience needs to hear from what the audience actually wants to hear. Talk to me more about that.
Well, there's this principle called the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge is that if you know something really well, you've been immersed in it, it's been your jam, you've got a lot of information in your head about that. And we subconsciously or unconsciously assume that everybody else has that information or cares about that information.
Cares about it is the operative word there.
A big problem. And so that's when we just dump that, or we leave things out because we assume too much. We assume that you have all this backlog when in fact you're coming at it from a totally different perspective. You haven't looked at it for 5 years like I have. So engineers, doctors, software programmers, others that are in high-tech industries, they are very much guilty of what I call curse of knowledge problems when they try to talk to normal people. They can talk in tribal language to each other and all their people get it. But when you get out of your bubble and you start talking to other people, you have to learn how to simplify, and you can never assume that people know what you're saying. So you have to illustrate, you have to give examples, you have to tell stories, you have to define your terms, you have to be careful with acronyms and jargon. Otherwise, you just shut
them down. I feel like I could go in 12 different directions and have 12 different episodes on this right now because please note, memory dart, former engineer who loves people. It is the high context of like a STEM brain is, I fall into this sometimes as well, to go back to, my husband and I communicate very differently and have somehow figured out how to make it work. But a lot of times I will start giving him context because I like context and I think he needs it, when really I just have one sentence I need to ask him about. And he'll be like, you're telling me all kinds of context and I don't even need it. Right. Yep. And so thinking about how to relate to your audience is just as critical as home as it is in marketing. So talk to me a little bit more about how we do that. So like, for instance, what's the anatomy of a memory dart?
So the memory dart is a way of packaging a single thought in a vivid way that quickly turns the light on. It makes people understand or think a certain way and triggers memory. So I go often by the term King of Clarity. That's my nickname. And when somebody called me that for the first time on my Facebook timeline years ago, he said, "Happy birthday to the King of Clarity." And I thought, wow, that's pretty presumptuous, but that's good branding.
I'm going to take it.
And I embraced it. And it's a memory dart because you've only met one King of Clarity. You've probably met 1,000 consultants, but there's only one King of Clarity. And it also begs the question, what's that mean? So it's not only meant to turn the light on, it's meant to provoke interaction and questions. and lead the conversation. It's meant to create engagement, not just exchange information. So a memory dart is to try to enlighten, it's try to create, and it's try to be memorable in somebody's mind.
Mhm.
People can hear 25 things about me and they'll forget 24 of them. But if they remember Steve's the king of clarity and the time comes to make a referral, I win because
They remember the right one of the 25.
they remembered the one that mattered the most.
I think about this in a very common scenario we all run into here in the good old US of A. Anytime we meet someone new is, hey, what do you do? So how does that sound with your memory dart?
So I have two memory dart formats that I use for the inevitable, ubiquitous, what do you do question? Because contained in the what do you do question is several things. Under the surface, that person's also asking, who are you? And why should I care about what you do? And what do you do? That's all actually in there. So one of the things I do when I introduce myself to a new person is I don't start with an exchange of facts. I start with the beginnings of a story. So I'll say, well, by now I should have been a retired astronaut, but I had to settle for becoming the king of clarity. And what that does is it makes people ask more questions. I've only given them a tiny bit of information, but I've begun to open the door to my story, which is the most interesting part that each of us has is our story. That's the most important part of any introduction is your story. And so by doing that, and everybody has an interesting twist in their background, in their story that they can use as a format for an introduction. So there's the intro with a twist, memory dart. And then there's the one sentence value proposition. Here's how you summarize what you do, the value you provide for people that makes you different. If you've got your intro with a twist and your one sentence value proposition, you are golden as far as opening up any networking conversation, getting to know people, and becoming memorable.
Okay, get ready, everyone. This means you have to change your thinking and stop saying, oh, I'm a doctor.
Correct.
Because the other thing about, and this is interesting, I love your take on this because I feel like this is a pattern interrupter, a pattern interrupter. And pattern interrupters are good in some ways and challenging in the others because as the person interrupting the pattern, it feels awkward to buck social norms, to say something wildly different, but it makes you more memorable. And I like your take on this because years and years ago, when I was in like 12 lifetimes ago, I did some business coaching. Not related to anything even close to what I do now. However, some stuff stuck. And they always used to talk about like your help statement, right? Because when you say I'm a doctor, you have put yourself into an absolute identity that is like non-negotiable, not one, and two, leaves no room for a conversation.
Right.
Instead of like, oh, well, I help people be, physically, mentally, and spiritually well. Oh, how do you do that? Well, here's my value proposition, right? It leads to an actual exchange instead of this just very short in a box identity. And this is a framework with how you can actually create the pattern interrupter. I love it.
Yeah, the pattern problem is the expected answer to the factual question, what do you do, is a factual answer. I'm a lawyer. Well, we haven't gotten anywhere. We've just moved one step down the road and gone nowhere. But one of my favorite introductions by a lawyer is, and I've never forgotten the way she introduced herself. She says, I'm J.K. Elkins, and I went to law school, so you don't have to.
That's so good.
Absolutely brilliant. I don't know how many lawyers I've met. I've forgotten them all, except her.
And you know her name.
I do. I still remember her name.
Because of that.
Because it was buried in the introduction, and it had this wonderful, amusing twist to it. And so another way to do a great intro with a twist is to take your job, the description of your job, and make it kind of funny. So at one point, my youngest son had started a job taking photography, both on his feet and with a drone. doing documentation of building sites. There's this whole world of people that document progress of building, and all this stuff goes back into the clouds and it's being analyzed. And he said, Dad, my job title is documentation specialist. That's not a good memory dart, is it? And I said, no, that sucks. I mean, who wants to talk to a documentation specialist? So we brainstormed a little bit, and I said, Seth, next time somebody asks, what do you do? Just answer this way. They pay me to fly drones and take pictures, which is true. They pay him to fly drones and take pictures, but it's funny. It's intriguing. It opens up a conversation, and we can take our factual jobs, or we can take some other thing and turn it into a little conversation starter just by playing a little bit of verbal game with it.
Well, and then you become J.K. Elkins, because by the way, now I'm going to remember her, right? You become the lawyer who went to law school so you didn't have to at the party, right? Steve becomes, hey, is that the guy that said something about being an astronaut? They might not remember the King of Clarity, which, by the way, Steve was the King of Clarity before ChatGPT started telling everybody in the world that clarity was the answer to everything. So we need to establish that right now.
That's correct.
But you become that person, right? And it's infinitely stickier in the long run. Here's where I struggle a little bit. I am selfishly using this to gather my own intel. Where I struggle is, how do you take your, let's say, memory dart plus one sentence value prop, your intro plus a twist plus your value prop, and actually get that conversation into something that is valuable to the audience, i.e., how do I take that and start to turn it into all the questions I want to ask them to see how we're going to potentially work together, right? So how does that transition or step?
So one of the most important skills, as you know, for a consultant or a coach or anybody, is asking questions. And one of the most important aspects of asking questions is digging into people's origin stories, success stories, failure stories, whatever's going on. You open the door to that when you start opening your door to your origin story. So when I talk about the astronaut thing, when I talk about the fact that I went to college after I couldn't make the astronauts thing, I wanted to be an astronomer. And so I went to college, and my dream died in my freshman year when I hit physics and calculus. And that was the end of
You and I are kindred spirits, Steve.
And what you do is when you tell people those bits, it helps them be able to open up. And then my technique is I ask people's origin stories and success stories. I just ask stories. And people talk to me for 40 minutes and realize that I haven't said anything about me. I've just been pulling it out of them. And one of the coolest networking strategies ever. If you have this one question, you'll be a great networker, and it's this. So if I say, Angie, what do you do? And you come back and you say, I'm a podcaster doing No More Monday, or whatever your answer is. And I say, Angie, I'll bet when you graduated high school, in your yearbook for your future plans, it didn't say, I'm going to be a No More Mondays podcaster. How did you get from there to here? And then I just shut up. And the stories pour out. And that is one of the best ways to get to know people and to conduct any kind of interview. But people are dying to tell their stories. They're just waiting for someone to ask.
They're waiting for somebody to ask and listen, because very few people in our life actually hear what we have to say or hear substantial amount of it. And it's funny. My friend Justin Shank talks about being interested instead of interesting. And I love that phrasing, because my MO in any sort of like networking conversation or like non-close friend circle is exactly to what you just said. And it's funny because I'm a former engineer who loves people, but I don't like to talk about myself. So my coping mechanism for that awkwardness is to just ask tons of questions. And in that actually comes out. So I could hear myself saying something like the following, and this is very helpful because I've been trying to workshop this. So you're all getting like Steve's coaching Angie in real time here. It's like somebody, hey, what do you do? Oh, I'm a former engineer who loves people. They're like, well, that's really strange, because that's usually the response. And I'll say, I know. And because of that, humans are my favorite systems to solve. What are you trying to workshop right now?
Yeah.
There we
So,
go. We just did it. That's like my version of the yearbook question.
yeah. And so now the one thing that's missing from yours is I don't yet know how you help people.
Oh,
So
okay. The value
you're an
proposition is
engineer,
missing.
you're a former engineer who loves people. That's cool. But you haven't yet let me know what you actually do in your interaction with those people and how the engineering background feeds into it. Because
Okay.
we want closure of stories. We want there to be, something following and going into something. So if you
Mm.
can tell me that you're a
Ah,
former engineer, but you really love people, and what I do now is I design something or other that sounds engineering-ish, but it's like, oh, you
yeah.
you make this difference in people's life, then you got it.
Yeah. So by the way, everyone, we're walking what we walk and talking what we talk right now, because also realize we're synthesizing this in like 4 minutes. So this isn't that hard, right? And so in that situation, it would be something like humans are my favorite system to solve. And I, coach and advise leaders and executives through tough decisions.
Mhm.
What kind of stuff are you trying to workshop right now? Right? That's
Right.
the dot connector.
Yeah.
See, this
Yeah.
isn't hard.
Well, it's challenging, though. It is
Well,
challenging.
and it took a while to get to the former engineer loves people, right? So I'm
Mhm.
cheating a little bit. However, in an effort to help everybody else out there maybe embrace their memory dart, one, you have to do it. Let me just
Mhm.
tell you that, because it is very easy when you walk into a room of people to just slide right back into the social norm, because at first it's a little uncomfortable to be the one doing things differently. But I also feel like I now wear a human shirt. So I get it. Like I have bought myself permission to be slightly off from the beginning.
Yep.
Right. So for everybody out there who may be really new to this idea of like, oh, wow, I can introduce myself or I can start a conversation differently. What is something, like even one thing they can do to simplify immediately?
So what you have to realize is that this is not only for the other people, this is for your confidence. When you can walk into any place and you can confidently answer the what do you do question, and you kind of just roll it off your tongue because you've practiced it a little bit and it fits, it's awesome. But the best thing you can do to start working on your introduction is I have a very simple format for every person that wants to create their origin story. And it's 4 steps. I started here, and that story could be your childhood, it could be your high school, it could be your first job, wherever you want to be, your college. I started here. Then this happened. That's the twist. That's the somebody told
Mm.
me I should do this. I was knocked off by a bicycle and broke 15 teeth. Whatever. Then this happened. Now I'm doing this. Now we're bringing up to speed. And here's where I'm heading. Here's my goal. Here's my aspiration. If you can answer those four questions with simple statements, each one, you have a compressed origin and evolution story that you can tell people in 1 minute. And you can also pull your introduction with a twist out of that, because
How did that?
everybody's got that. And then this happened. Most of us have like 5 of those. And then this happened in our history.
Yeah. Every several years, you have a then this happened.
That's correct. And it turns out that that's the most interesting thing you can say. Everybody wants to know that they're talking
Mhm.
to an interesting human. And as soon as you show up as someone that had this accident or fell off this cliff or was hired away by that or went through a downsizing that took any of that, it makes it so much easier for people to relate to you instead of you're just some stuffed shirt with a role and a title and that's it.
Yeah. Instead of a box, you're kind of like a whole exciting toy department.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's just so interesting how people we learn and communicate in stories. However, for some reason, we don't tend to use them in many of these situations where it's really like high opportunity. And here's the thing, we're going to use as this active case study in my own episode. I started here, then this happened, now I'm doing X and here's where I'm heading. many of you listening know enough of my story to here are my answers to, I can actually identify them and line them up. I started my career as an engineer. Then I moved to Colorado and realized there's more to life than sitting in a cubicle and designing documents. And because I love people, I channeled that into coaching, where I am now advising executives and teams in how to navigate complex problems.
See, now in that's just this nice compact, that's like 40 seconds.
I'm so glad this is recorded, Steve.
And you have just outlined both your story and your value proposition in just this little, and anybody can do that. We all have that. And your story, everybody's story is unique and interesting. So all you have,
we all have those 4 parts.
Yes, we all do. And so just craft those into your little story, and then that makes you a storyteller. And then, as we talked about earlier, become a story asker. Ask people about their story, ask them about their background. And as soon as they start, you have all kinds of, well, how did you meet that person? How long did that job last before you realized that was no good? And you can go on and on just asking these questions for an hour, being an interested interviewer, because I'm very curious. I love hearing people's story. And so it makes people feel warm. It makes people feel liked. It makes people feel important. And all you're doing is just figuring out new stuff, finding out interesting stuff. And I love hearing about new businesses or new approaches or weird twists in the machine. It's fun.
Well, and so if I read through those 4, my MO is to be asked that question first, right? Hey, what do you do? Okay, well, I started here, went there, this happened. And when I get to the here's what I'm doing now, I would most likely end that with, what about you? Because now I'm on the question asking offensive. But let me add one more thing that I think is really interesting here. We all have these 4 parts, but because we tend to hide them or feel vulnerable about them, we don't talk about them. But as soon as you show yourself as willing to say, yeah, this thing happened and changed it all, you have kind of created an atmosphere of solidarity and connection. And that's instant rapport territory.
You give people permission to be human. And when you're in the corporate world, that's actually kind of counterintuitive. In the corporate world, you're supposed to say all the right jargon, say all the right thing. Well, I'm a VP of HR, blah, 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 and give your all your credibility title nonsense. And you really stand out from the crowd when you actually are more creative and more human about it. And it gives those other people permission to then drop their guard and be more human.
It really is amazing what happens when you give yourself and therefore others permission to be human. Turns out humans still matter, and Steve is the clarity king. There you go. But this to me comes back to the simplicity of all of this, the exploration it requires you to do to find those simple nuggets. But at the end of the day, it's just a very clear and effective way to communicate and start a relationship, instead of, I am going to tell you everything I possibly want you to know about me in one fell swoop, which, by the way, is really common when people go to interviews, right? And they can't trust that everything will unfold over the 29 minutes. This is a really, really great system to think about. Even if you're going to an interview, you can twist this a little bit to be interview specific, but it's the idea of what do I want someone to know about me?
Yeah. And to do that effectively in an interview, you've got to be in touch with your keywords, your core strengths, the things that make you different. If you don't have a distinct and differentiating understanding of your identity, you're going to just spew jargon and try to measure up to be like everybody else. Your goal isn't to be like everybody else. It's to be different from everybody else. You've got to differentiate. And so in that interview, if you happen to be just 100% primo at project management, no detail left behind, that's what you go with when you in that interview. You say, and when it comes down to doing organization and project management, there is no detail left behind. Every role I take, people just absolutely go gaga over the way I end up reporting and making things happen. Well, then that's what I want. Or if that's not what I want, then good. I've just eliminated myself from a job I'm not going to be happy in.
You're not a fit for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But the big thing here is this goes back to confusion. And that is if you can't clearly articulate your value proposition, whether you're interviewing, whether you're talking to a potential customer, whether you're talking to your team and trying to get their buy-in to something, whatever it is, if you can't clearly communicate the goal, the need, or the value proposition, you have a confused buyer. And confused buyers don't make any decision. They just don't act.
And you become a commodity. You just blend into the background. And so I have a little friend behind me. Just a moment. I'll be right back. My colleague, Justin.
We have a special guest.
Yeah. So Justin is my emperor penguin. And the way I illustrate it is this way. We've all seen those nature programs where you have all these penguins on the ice floe. And they all look the same. They all sound the same.
They all walk the same. Oh, yes. They're adorable.
And I say, look, you are just another penguin on the ice floe until you have some kind of differentiating message. And whether you're just another potential new hire, you're just another digital agency, you're just another coach. And so you don't want to be another penguin. You've got to have a way of standing out. Otherwise, you're just off in the background among the other 100 people that are not going to be accepted. So what is it about you that is uniquely awesome? And if you don't know your superpower, you need to figure it out. And you need to talk to people closest to you who work with you and ask the question, what am I absolutely fantastic at? What is my absolutely best thing? And that's what you're going to lead with when you are talking to people. And that's true on a company level, that's true on a brand level, and that's true on an individual level. You've got to be in touch with your awesome and not be ashamed of it.
Oh, love the ad on the bottom at the end of there, right? Is sometimes we just have to embrace our weird because it's actually the thing that makes you different. It is a superpower, but in an effort to blend into the sea of sameness, we try to like neutralize it instead of being the penguin who is the one who gets filmed for Planet Earth, right? Mm-hmm. How are you the weird penguin that actually gets filmed?
Yeah. Well, you got to be that penguin. The best illustration that Seth Godin, who's a brilliant marketing writer, he wrote this book called Purple Cow that was transformative for me. And the reason he wrote that book with that title is if you drive past these fields of cows, nobody's going to remark about any cow until they see a purple one. If you see a purple cow, you're going to talk about that purple cow. And great marketing and great branding and great messaging is about purple cows.
Purple cow.
You don't want to just be background noise. You can't afford to be background noise, not in this environment. And so it's up to us to bring forward what it is that makes us unique and then to turn the light on for other people, because otherwise they don't know.
And we're all in the dark.
Yep.
And guess what's a purple cow, y'all? A memory dart. Turns out clarity.
Purple cow is a memory dart. Justin is a visual memory dart. I speak in memory darts. I mean, that's what I do because that's what I believe in. And when you are aware of the concept of memory darts, you'll suddenly see them everywhere. The great communicators throughout all generations have used that format to grab and turn the light on in the mind.
You just helped me connect two dots, Steve.
Uh-oh.
A lot of times I say that cliches are a thing because they're true, but guess what? It's usually because those statements are memory darts. Like comfort doesn't come in growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone or whatever those they're sound bites. They are highly, highly memorable and they're true for a reason, right? They're sticky. So for all of you out there, I challenge you to think about what's your purple cow? What's your stuffed penguin? What is your memory dart? Where'd you start? What happened? What are you doing now? And where are you heading? And how do you turn that into a memory dart that becomes a great conversation starter that has clarity and curiosity behind it?
You got it.
This is a pretty good conversation with a lot of clarity behind it, Steve. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. It's been really fun. And of course, I still remember your t-shirt, which is a visual memory dart, by the way, about, the human thing. And Yeah, you live this out. You embrace your weird and you just put that right out there.
That's right.
And the fact is, if you didn't, if you were just, well, I'm an executive coach that helps people, blah, 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 nobody would care and nobody would listen to you.
Nope. Nope. And so, on that note, as we close things out, I have a thought, and then I want you to give everybody a little clue on where they can find you in the book and study this more. Don't try too hard here, because if you try really hard to be like overly creative about your memory dart, you may end up shifting it into something that you actually just aren't. So I love the idea of get out, have conversations with people, pick up on the words they use commonly for you, and be okay with your unique differentiators as you go out into your, authentic, impactful self. And so for somebody out there who wants a little bit more help and wants to dig into this a little bit more, how do they find and follow you and get the reading material that is very, very helpful here?
So my two books are on Amazon. One's called Clarity Wins, and the other is called The Point. Clarity Wins focuses more on developing your brand messages and your memory darts. The Point is an actual universal formula for clear communication, because clarity goes beyond introductions. It goes into everything we do. And so I have an entire framework for clear communications that we haven't even begun to touch on yet. You can find out more about me at stevewoodruff.com, not surprising. And then as far as the social channels, LinkedIn is where I spend most of my time. So if you look for me on LinkedIn, you'll see, the presumptuous king of clarity again. And you can feel free to follow me there.
Own it, Steve. And I don't even need to tell you that, because you do. See, own your weird. And it doesn't have to be weird, just unique. Steve, I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It's been a blast, Angie.
Yeah, clarity is simpler than we think. And it doesn't take a lot to stand out in this world full of distractions, except for that one thing as clarity. And so Steve's book, follow him on LinkedIn. If this is where you're watching, he's connected to me. We've got all the links in the show notes. And remember, clarity about yourself comes down to knowing what makes you unique and not being afraid to lean into it. Again, Steve, huge thanks for being here today, and to all of you out there for listening. If this conversation got you thinking, I don't know how it didn't, by the way. Even I'm over here thinking, and I do this stuff. Share it with somebody who needs to hear it, or leave us a rating, because it's hugely, hugely helpful. And as always, I'm grateful for you, Steve, and everybody out there for being part of the No More Mondays community. And until next time, here's to fewer Sunday scaries and no more Mondays. See you next week.